Hello everybody. Today I'm going to analyze a game that I played yesterday. It was a 30 minutes without increment tournament on chess.com. This game is against Seal 4891. I had the white pieces. I started with my usual Slav Queen's Gambit opening. So far my opponent playing very normal moves. I decided for Queen C2 because I wasn't sure about the theory, to be honest. I pondered for a while to just capture on d5, but I thought that would give black an easier game. Black could recapture with the e-pawn, and that frees the light square bishop. I'm pretty sure that's all theory and it's all fine, but I wasn't comfortable with. I didn't want to give such an easy game to my opponent, so just keep it attention for now. Normal developing moves. Didn't want to exchange bishops, partly because this helps somewhat in the development of the black queen, helps push the e-pawn a little bit later on. So I didn't want to go for that. Instead, I wanted to keep the tension both in the center and just in the position. I debated myself here again if I should play c5 or not. I haven't checked theory. I haven't checked any openings or anything like that after the game. Playing c5 would most likely force black to play bishop c7 in order to keep an eye out on the e5 square, which would be the freeing move for black's position. Black wants to play e5 in order to open lines for the rook and for the bishop. So right now this pawn on e5 on e6 is playing against black's position. So that's why it makes sense to keep this bishop on this diagonal. If instead it would go here, that's playing against the black position because it doesn't help, it actually hinders pushing the e6 pawn. I know there are ideas revolving around b6, for example, and trying to break this chain of pawns, but I think this would have been okay as well. In any case, I decided to go for e3 instead, preparing to recapture on c4 with the bishop, and if I choose so, I now can develop the knight to c3. Knight bd7, focusing on pushing the e6 pawn. At this moment, if I push the c pawn, it doesn't really stop black from achieving their plan. I don't think it helps my position at all, so I had already discarded this idea. Bishop d3, just normal development, threatening to take on h7 with check. The knight on f6 is pinned, so black reacts accurately. Queen e8. Now we can see that there are quite a few pieces converging on the e5 square. There's the bishop, there's the knight, and there's the queen. The knight, however, is guarding this other knight. If an advance would happen too early, it wouldn't help as much. This knight has a duty. Otherwise, the pawn structure around the king side would be wrecked. And with the battery pointing to h7, it might be risky. So at this point, I decided to taking advantage of this situation. I was pretty sure my opponent would take with the e pawn and try to reinforce now the e4 square. Try to play knight e4 and establish an outpost. but they capture with the c pawn, and I think this is the first mistake. I think this is a mistake, a strategical mistake, not a tactical blunder or anything like that. I was very happy when I saw this because black opened a file, and I already have a strong piece in that file. I already have influence in that file. It's not too hard to bring another piece into the open file. So suddenly I could see how my pieces would become active and have a purpose. I didn't really do much to get this. I think it was just normal play, just keeping the tension, and eventually my opponent made a suboptimal move. Castle, h6. I'm not going to give away the tension so easily, so bishop h4, and now knight e4. The move h6 was a bit surprising connecting to this idea. I think they just blundered, because right now I can take on e4. There are two pieces attacking e4 and only one pawn defending it. So I debated myself quite a while if this was a free pawn, or if there was some kind of sneak attack, some tactic that I was missing. I did see, of course, that after taking on e4, pawn takes and queen takes, black would have the f5 move, kicking my queen back, but I didn't think that was significant. What I thought was more important in that sequence was that black does have g5 and maybe at some point f5 and f4, trapping my bishop. But the conclusion that I reached was that after black is able to kick my queen, playing f5, and eventually playing f4, I do have a pawn on e3 that can capture. And after recapturing, the knight that was stuck here would be able to go back to the h4 square and have a reasonable play. So I decided to take the knight and the pawn. And sure enough, my opponent played f5. I just went back. I don't have a clear idea why I played queen d3. At the moment, I think I played it rather fast. One of the things I did notice was that my queen was opposite to the bishop, so I think that deterred a little bit the advance of the pawn. Later on, I'm seeing things like queen b5 being somewhat active, queen b3, and maybe hitting b7 on a good day. Queen d3, I must admit, it was played mostly instinctively. King h8, a sensible move, and bishop e3. I'm happy to exchange bishops because of that idea. I didn't want my opponent to have an easy plan with trying to advance the pawns and both bishops aiming at my king, and maybe some open lines for the rooks. At some point, I didn't want any of that, so I wanted to exchange. They didn't go for that, and it allowed me to develop a piece. Sure, I can play something like bishop e5 now, and it would probably be okay, but my rooks are not connected. I am not making use of the c file, so I wanted to get everyone involved. I saw an idea of maybe playing eventually knight c4 and knight e5 and have a greater influence on the board. Of course, the rooks are happy to come to the c file, so it all seemed to be working out well for me. Also, the bishop on g3 now is also eyeing the b8 and c7 squares. Especially the c7 square might prove useful. If I ever manage to bring a rook there, it would be protected, or it seems like a very useful move. So from my opponent, going back, that's a weak move. This bishop doesn't really have a lot of activity on e7. It was way more active on d6. Queen e7, for example, would have been an okay move. So they play knight f6. I would say this move does carry a purpose. It is a useful move. Of course, it frees a little bit the bishop, gives a chance to play bishop d7, for example. It also might mean at some point to play knight e4, not right now. Maybe some knight jumps around d5 as well could be useful, especially connected with the idea of pushing the pawn to f4. Anyways, I continued with making use of the open file. Sure enough, my opponent played bishop d7. There is nothing I can do to stop the bishop from going to c6. And for that reason, I didn't want to play rook c7 right now. Rook c7 seems active, seems like a useful move, but it really isn't. It really isn't because it can just be trapped. Bishop c6, for example, traps my rook right away, and then there's bishop d8, and it's under attack. Also, there is a threat with bishop d7, and that is to play bishop b5, skewering my queen and rook. I thought I could get away with it, but I also thought that it would give black a lot of undeserved activity. Let's say that I make an innocent move. It allows bishop b5, and I can block with the knight. The rook can become active. Keep in mind that it's my queen behind the knight. So two pieces defending it. This doesn't really attack the bishop. I don't know. It seems like it's nothing, and I agree. And I think during the game I realized it really was nothing. But at the same time, why would I want to allow some initiative? Suddenly the black rook is so much better placed, and what am I going to do? I still need another tempo to free the rook. I don't know. It didn't seem like a good plan to give activity and initiative to my opponent. So instead of that, after bishop d7, I just played rook e1. If bishop b5 comes, it hits the queen, but nothing else. I can play queen b3, for example, and now I have some pressure on e6. The black rook on a8 is still not developed. I thought it was just better, keeping the tension again. Bishop c6 and knight e5. I'm ready to kick that knight. I thought at this point that maybe bishop d5 was best for black, and still try to develop the rooks, try to connect the rooks. The problem is that at this moment my knight is a monster. My knight on e5 is hitting so many sensitive squares. Suddenly the queen has a job to guard g6, because otherwise I have a fork and I pick up the rook. The knight is also stopping ideas around here. Of course, threatening the bishop, which is black's most active piece. So I was very happy when black played this. Excuse me. Bishop e4. I think I didn't spend much time on this move, and I just took directly. And I was surprised when black took with the pawn, because it's by all accounts rushed. I really think black should have taken with the knight and tried to exchange this bishop, because the center is semi-open and this bishop has a lot more influence on the board than the knight. The knight coming here, I don't know, this knight is a beast, and black has to do something about it. Taking with the pawn, it may seem like the black rook has an idea, has threats around the king, but while the bishop is here, the bishop is guarding f2. There's no threat. And in any case, it's rather easy for white to just defend and overprotect f2. So I think that was not the most accurate continuation. I continued with queen b3, attacking the e6 pawn and attacking the b7 pawn. I am actually not interested in the b7 pawn because it would allow black to play rook b8 and then capturing on b2. And then there might be ideas around f2. So I am actually only concerned or aiming for this e6 pawn. That's really my goal. Black played knight d5. Again, this is, I don't see how this knight move connects to taking with the f pawn. I really couldn't see any help for that. So I just played rook c2, getting ready to double rooks. Now this move, I really liked it because it, not because it covers f2. f2 is under no threat at all, but because it covers because it covers b2, the b2 pawn, sorry. So now I am really threatening to take on b7. The rook going to b8 doesn't threaten the pawn on b2. So black played b6, and I saw a chance to attack the e6 pawn one more time. So rook c6. Again, I'm not going to give up the exchange. Rook takes b6, knight takes, and then queen takes. I'm not interested in that. The queen has a duty again to defend g6. So the queen is tied to defending that square, and a move like this might not even be good enough. This would allow me the tactic to just take here. Let's see if this works, because I haven't really calculated this. This check, this, and this. And how are we standing? I'm down some material. Okay, let's ignore that. Let's ignore that. It doesn't really work. I guess I could still come with some pressure, but in any case, black has to deal with this threat in some way. I thought this would have been a good way, because it threatens to capture on e5. So if I don't go bananas and I just double, then this is a real option for black, because now this knight is protecting also c7. So I still don't have rook c7, because I would just lose that. Otherwise, there would be quite a lot of pressure against g7. The bishop now is the new beast, but it would take some time to capitalize on that. I'm not completely sure how I would proceed. Maybe something like this, taking advantage of the situation. Let's keep in mind that the queen still has to guard that pawn. So maybe this might be more accurate. And there is a lot of pressure for sure, and the problem is that this knight is only protected by the pawn. So once the pawn on e6 falls, the queen is attacking it, and if it moves, the pawn on b6 falls. So it feels a bit sensitive. Okay, maybe not this exact sequence, because black would have checkmate, but you get the idea. So black in this position after rook c6, black played rook b8. And I just took the pawn. I thought, why not? Now I am seriously threatening knight g6 with a fork. I am also threatening to take the knight, and there are so many threats, especially knight g6, because knight g6 also releases the bishop on g3, attacking the rook on b8. So it's a fork by the knight, and it's a discovered attack by the bishop, and it's an attack on the knight on d5. So everything collapsed. And here my opponent played rook b7 and resigned directly. I think they saw that the knight was hanging. I would have just taken the knight directly, because why not? It's a free piece. It's better than Well, this one still has its sweet spot. Like this is still interesting. If black were to play king here, I can still take, recapture, and then I can take the free piece and threaten queen takes e4, and everything is hanging still. I'm up a ton of material. And if black will decide to go king here instead, I can still take the free piece and threaten a discovered. So let's say that black plays something like this. Maybe I can just go for it anyways. If they try to save the rook in some way, this is just fatal. So, oh, and at the same time the queen is attacking the rook, so this is also pretty strong on both sides of the board. So, yeah, in this position my opponent resigned. I think it was a good game up to the last couple of moves when they collapsed. In any case, this was the first game of the tournament yesterday. I'm happy that I won it. If you see another tactic, another idea, please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.